Hey everyone, a few days ago I posted some pics of my new home office, tutorial recording, online meeting room, and people love the pictures, but they wanted more. They wanted a video of behind the scenes, showing the setup, showing what gear I used, and this is the video you asked for. I wasn't going to do a video, but you asked for it, so here it is. Don't worry about taking a whole bunch of notes because down in the description, I put a link to every single thing that I'm going to talk about, as well as a few things that I'm not going to talk about, but the links are there in case you need them. So with that said, let's get started. First, I want to make it clear that I actually have 3 different studios and workspaces in my home. This is my home office for doing office work, online meetings, and recording tutorials. I also have my live streaming studio for all my live classes and master classes that you probably have seen. And when I bring guests, there's more room in that room, as well as additional equipment that I need for live streaming. Lastly, I have my photography studio where I do my portrait and product shoots, as well as I can stream live from there as well to show behind the scenes and teach classes on photography. Now let's go back to the office and start with the door. I added a holomark fingerprint doorknob lock. I love this lock because it's equipped with a fingerprint sensor that's positioned right on top where I would naturally put my thumb anyway as I'm turning the knob. So in one motion, it unlocks the door and I can open it. Next, when I walk into the room, I can either hit the main light switch, which is a Lutron Caseta dimmer switch for the main lights. I use these dimmers and light switches throughout my entire home. Or I can use my Hue dimmer switch, which is wireless, no wires connected. And I've set up this as a controller in HomeKit. So that means that each button can be programmed with a different scene or automation. So in this case, the top button activates my I'm in a meeting scene. And that turns on the main LED panel via a smart plug. The Hue plate accent lights that are behind me on the wall, or actually on the floor, pointed at the wall. And my new nano leaf lines, those are the actual lights that some of you refer to as neon lights behind me. And lastly, across the room, the shapes, neon or nano leaf shapes above my TV. It also turns on the TV and sets the input to the Apple TV 4K, as well as adjust my Ecobee thermostat to a cooler temperature for doing meetings so I don't get too hot in this room. The 2 middle buttons open and close my smart blinds. And the bottom button, of course, turns everything off as I leave the room. So I just hit the button, it turns everything off. It's the opposite of the top button. Now, lastly, I set up an automation that when I leave the house, so when I drive away, if I left any one of these rooms on, if I left my studio on, my live streaming area, or my office on, it turns off everything in those areas as well. So in case I forgot to do it manually. If you know me, I'm a fan of occupancy sensors for turning on lights, but I don't need all the lights in this room just for walking in and doing office work. So I do have an Ecobee occupancy sensor that not only monitors the temperature and humidity, but also will turn on the main lights at night if I come in the room. So that way I don't walk into a dark room if I can avoid it. The main light I use for lighting me during my meetings is an inexpensive daylight balance GVM light panel. I have a pair of these and I also wrap them in a couple of layers of diffusion material to soften the light even more. However, if I were to replace these today, it would be with the new LumeCube Studio Pros. Those light panels just have a whole bunch of features I love, including built-in batteries, so they can be run without being plugged into the power. Now, let's move on to the camera. I get a lot of questions about this camera, especially since I'm a Nikon shooter. I'm using a Sony. Yep, I'm using a Sony Alpha ZV-E10. At the time, it was the best camera for this purpose because it's a camera that it serves as a USB webcam when you plug in a USB cord. No drivers, no software, no capture cards. I'm also using it with a Sigma 16mm f1.4 lens. Now, and again, the reason I like this is because I've never shot with it in 4K with a memory card or anything like that. I've always used it as a webcam because I can have professional lenses on it. So I do have it set to manual mode, and that way I can control the shutter speed and f-stop and ISO manually. And the continuous autofocus on this thing is just amazing. So for example, if I were to hold up a product it quickly focuses on that product. If I move that product away, it comes back to me, hold a different product up, same product in this case, quickly focuses on that product, move it away. So it's great for doing these kind of tech demos where I'm showing gear. Now, next up, let's when I'm actually doing a meeting or recording a tutorial, I bring in my MacBook Pro M1 Max and plug it in to a single USB cable. I use an Anchor USB-C dock that connects all my peripherals, including gigabit Ethernet. Big fan of Ethernet. Everything that can be connected to Ethernet is connected, hardwired. That way I'm never running into a problem of any kind of wireless disconnects during a meeting or something important. Now, I'm down to just this one computer for my work. So I basically take this computer from room to room. If I'm doing a photo shoot, it's in there in my tethering station for tethering into Lightroom Classic. If I'm doing a live stream broadcast, it's in that room as well, connected to another dock and connected to all my live stream setup. So one computer, that way I've got everything on it all the time, even when I travel. Now, I also have the MacBook Pro on a height adjustable stand, so the screen is eye level. This way, I'm never looking down at a screen for long periods of time during a meeting. If I need to glance at the screen, I just glance at it, come back to you, and that way I'm always looking at you no matter what. This is also the reason why I have the Apple TV behind the camera, so that it's mirroring what's on that display. So if I do need to look at a note or need to look at the actual participants in the meeting, I'm looking past the camera at the screen, and that way I'm still making eye contact, whether it's reading notes or talking to a person in a meeting. And that's why I love this particular setup, and that's why the Apple TV is important. Now, I do have an iPad mini below the stand, so if I glance down at that, it's just for a second to check my presentation timer. My second display is an inexpensive Wacom One display tablet. I use this display to record my tutorials and to do my demos, since the native resolution on it is 1920 by 1080 HD anyway, and it also serves as a tablet. So this way I'm getting a perfect HD recording every single time. And also when I record vertical video, since it's lightweight, it's on a stand, I could easily just pick it up and rotate it and go to my OS, rotate it there. And that way I'm doing a perfect vertical video at 1080 by 1920. My microphone, that's a big part of all of this, is a good mic. My microphone is the new Rode Pod mic. It's a podcasting mic. I love this mic because it not only has a USB-C connection, but it also has an XLR jack so that you can use it with a more professional setup for audio equipment that connects via XLR. I also have a Brother color laser network printer. I'm not even going to put the link there because this printer is so old. I'm sure they don't even make this model anymore, but still kicking, still whenever I need to print something, which is rare, it's there. And the reason I love this printer is not only because it's Wi-Fi and of course connects to Ethernet, but connected to Ethernet serves up the entire house for printing, and it has AirPrint built in. So that when I need to print from my phone or from my iPad, I can just print wirelessly over the air to the printer and come upstairs and pick it up. So that's, it's great as a printer. Lastly, what's all this stuff behind me? As you might have guessed, I'm a big fan of science fiction and a big fan of Star Wars and Star Trek, of course. However, I also use or have some of my original tech here too as well. For example, my first digital camera was actually an Apple QuickTake 100. This was back when digital cameras were first being invented. And the pictures from this camera were only 640 by 480 resolution. It used a serial cable to connect to the Mac and transfer the images over. And of course, as you can expect, the pixel quality of those images weren't very good. However, I saw the handwriting on the wall and I knew that that film was on its last legs. That film, I was done with film. I got this digital camera, and even though the images weren't as good, I used it from that point on because I knew the quality would keep getting better camera after camera, and it did, and film did go away. So I'm happy with that. Now, you'll also notice, hey, here's a device that people are going to say, what's that? It's the Apple Newton Message Pad. For those of you kids in the room that are watching this, like, what's that? This was before the phone, before a smartphone, before even a cellular phone, I believe. Maybe. It was definitely before you were carrying one in your pocket. And it was also before the iPad, before any other kind of tablet device of its nature. So it was a PDA. And we used PDAs before we had smartphones to do contacts, to do notes, to do all that kind of stuff. And you could run apps, a couple different apps on it that were built in. And you could even plug a modem card in it and send faxes and receive faxes. So it was big. It was big back then. It had handwriting recognition. So you used the stylus and you wrote your notes with your handwriting, and it would transcribe the handwriting into actual text. It was good. It wasn't great, but it was before its time. It was before anything else like it. And the Newt message pad, I still have it in my heart. So I keep it there on display to remind me of what things used to be. So I also have my original iPhone. The first generation iPhone is up there as well. It's still in its box. And that's it. So hopefully you enjoyed taking a behind the scenes look at my spaces. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll catch you on the next one. Bye, everybody.